So now that we've focused on all of our theologians, determining what's orthodox or not, let's set all of that aside and let's get a preview, a glimpse of what it is we're going to be studying in our next course. What is our next course together after we finish this course next week? Then 2 weeks from tonight, we're jumping into a course on modern philosophy. So for those in the room who like philosophy, this is going to be great. This next chapter gives us a preview of what we're going to be hearing in modern philosophy. Gonzalez refers to this chapter as the rationalist option, because there were a lot of irrational people, and a lot of people who were following this line of faith, theologians. No, let's not talk theology now. Let's talk philosophy, because what these philosophers are going to come up with are going to impact our theology, what we believe. So these philosophers, this rationalism, we call it, would climax in the 18th and 19th century. So that would be the 1700s and 1800s. That would be rationalism. These people are going to be interested more in the power of reason. It's not about what you believe. It's not about the heart. It's about reason. Can we all be rational here in this room? Right? I know there's some people in this room who are claiming to have revelations at night because the Blessed Virgin Mary is coming into them and talking to them in their dreams. They're writing down their dreams and telling us all of the words that Mary spoke to them last night. Can we be rational about this? We're just going to put your faith aside, check your beliefs at the door. We're going to try to be rational about this. So we're going to focus on reason, and we're going to focus on nature and the world. Because if you look at the world, did you ever notice what happens every morning? The sun comes up in that direction, and it goes across the side, and it goes around the world, and it sets in that direction. There is a certain order in nature. There's some reason in nature. It just seems that if we as human beings could follow the same, then we would be in a better position than all these irrational people imposing their beliefs on others. So the first name that we're going to have is René Descartes. That's spelled wrong. It should have a T in there. C-A-R-T-E-S, Descartes. So Descartes placed great confidence in mathematical reasoning. Have we all studied geometry? Do you remember some of the axioms in geometry? Can you help me with one axiom in geometry? So I'm thinking in geometry. Have you ever, for instance, when it comes to right triangles, those are triangles that have a 90-degree angle. I'm told that it is always the case that a squared, if this is side A, and this is side B, and this is side C, a squared plus b squared always equals c squared. I don't pretend to understand it, but that's how math is. There are certain rules and laws that govern it. It's fascinating. So what if we were to reduce everything in the world to math? So Descartes had this great confidence in mathematical reasoning. He distrusted anything that was not absolutely certain. In math, there are certain things that are certain. And that is, if you tell me what these two numbers are, I can tell you what that number is. Right? Because a squared, if a is 1, I should say 3. If that's 3 and if this is 4, if a is 3, so 3 squared is 9, plus 4 squared is 16, so 9 plus 16 equals 25, so c squared equals 25, so c is the square root of 25, so c is 5. I don't pretend to understand it, but if this is a right angle, if this is 90 degrees, and if this is 3, and if this is 4, then this always must be 5. Mathematical certainty. If we have a right triangle, you tell me what this is, you tell me what this is, and I can tell you what this is. Things that we're absolutely certain of. If we're not certain of certain things, then we're not talking about them in this room. Follow me? Cynthia came in and told us about her dream of the Blessed Virgin Mary and Saint Hoodledorf last night, who told her that all of us need to start dressing in green every day. Can any of us be certain about the origin of that revelation? Okay, then that's, sorry, we're checking that at the door. Only those things that we can be absolutely certain about are going to be talked about here. So, Descartes, what things can we be certain about? he said there are a few things we can be absolutely certain about. Think about it for one moment. What's the first thing that you can be certain about? Your own existence. Repeat after me. I am. I am. I am. When every person in this room says, I am, that's affirming your own existence. That there's something about you, I don't know what, I can only speak for myself. When I say I am, it's affirming that there's some I that exists. I am. I don't know about you, I can't prove it, but I'm imagining that you yourself have that own experience of saying, I am. I am. And the way that we can prove our own existence is through thinking that I am, okay? I think, therefore I am. Have you heard that before? That's Descartes. I think, therefore I am. I am. I am. I can prove my own existence. I can't prove your existence. You might be an illusion. I can't prove your existence. Only you can prove your own existence. But I can prove my own existence. I think, and therefore I am. In Latin, cogito, I think. Ergo sum, therefore I am. So that's the one thing I can be certain about so far is that I am. I think, and therefore I am. I'm certain about that. I am. I'm certain that I exist. Things like the body, I'm not certain about because it could all be illusion for all I know. I know that I'm certain that I am, whatever this I is. I don't know where this I exists, this I, but I know that I am. I think, and so I am. And so we're coming up with distinction now. He contrasted the thinking thing, the res cogitans. There's this thing inside my head that's thinking, and that thing exists. The res cogitans, I'm certain about that. The res extensa, I can't be so certain about. That's anything else that exists in this world. I don't know. I could be mistaken. I'm not absolutely certain about the existence of anything else, including my own body. But there's something within me, this I am. There's this thinking thing that I'm certain about. All the rest I could be deceived about. I think this table is brown, but there could be other people who come along and convince me otherwise, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I'm not seeing it correctly. But the thing that I'm certain about, absolutely certain about, is that I am. The other thing, as I'm thinking about this, is that I know that I am, and I know that I am not perfect, but I have this idea of something that's more perfect. So where does this idea of something more perfect come from? It's got to come from something more perfect. So his second certain thing, his second axiom, if you will, that he believed was absolutely certain was that God exists. Why? Because if I have this idea of a more perfect being, it must have come from somewhere. It must have come from a more perfect being, God. So two things now are certain. I am. It's certain that I exist, and it's certain that God exists because there has to be a more perfect being than what I am. The challenge is that some declare that Cartesianism was heterodox, was a heresy, or could lead to heresy. Why? Well, let's get back to that in a moment. If you're accused of being heterodox in France, Descartes was from France, do you really want to be a heretic in France? Probably not so much. You probably want to find a more tolerable, a more tolerant place to live. So he went to spend the rest of his life in Sweden. There were certain questions that were unresolved. For instance, how does the body, the res extensa, the thing that's extended in space and time, how does this thing communicate with the res cogitans, this I am? Have you ever thought about this before in your mind? How is you, the essence of your being, your I, related to your body? This is how they tried to explain it in a few different ways. There was occasionalism, or monism, or pre-established harmony, which helped to explain how the body is related to the soul. How is your body related to your soul? Let's think about that for a moment. Occasionalism means that these two things are totally separate. Your body and your soul are two different things and don't even communicate with one another, except that God brings them together. So divine intervention brings together your body and your soul, and so essentially you can blame God for all the events and thoughts that you have because God is the one who brings your body and your soul together to create that thing. Monism is slightly different. Monism says that your thought, the way you're thinking, and your physical extension, your body, are both attributes of a single substance. Let's take the example of a book. So a book has different attributes. It has smell. Have you ever smelled a book? Books smell a certain way. They feel a certain way. Even without my eyes, I can tell that this is a book. It feels a certain way. Books look a certain way. Did you ever notice that? There's something about a book that I can distinguish a book from a piece of paper. There's something different about it. It looks different. There's certain attributes that a book has. It weighs more or less a certain amount. There's certain things that help me to distinguish a book from other things. Well, when it comes to the body and the soul, there is nothing that distinguishes the body and the soul. They're both attributes in the same way that sight and smell and weight and all those attributes are of a single thing. God and the world are both attributes of the universe. Oh, this is dangerous. This is extremely heterodox for Catholics. This is heresy. Follow me? If you follow Descartes, you're stepping into heresy. Why? Because we believe that God made the world. Two different things. Follow me? God made the world. If you go down the road of monism, it's suggesting that God and the world are somehow one. Pre-established harmony. Think about this analogy for a moment. Descartes said, think about going into a clockmaker's shop. Okay, back at that time, we didn't have digital clocks. What were the clocks like? We had to wind them up. And did you ever notice that all of these clocks are ticking at the same tick, 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 tick? All these clocks are going the same. Oh, fascinating. But they're all independent. So couldn't it be that all of us are sort of like that? Each of us is a clock that's wound up by the clockmaker, God, and then we just go off doing what it is that we do, right? The clockmaker made the clock, wound the clock up, and then it goes. Interesting. That's pre-established harmony, that view, that an infinite number of independent monads exist. Think 7 billion people on this earth. God created 7 billion people, wound them up, and lets them go. And they don't communicate with one another like clocks in a shop, right? One clock doesn't depend on another clock. They're just doing their own things, right? Isn't that how human beings in this world are, said Descartes. The challenge is that this view implies that God foreordains all things because God determines, right? God puts together the clock. So however it was that you were put together, you can blame God for whatever happened to you. And it doesn't allow for human freedom because, you know what? Once God winds you up and lets you go, you're doing what clocks do. You follow me? You're choosing good or bad. It's all part of how you're wound.
It's also like, they did the opposite argument also where, God built the clocks and let them run, but now you're responsible for what you do.
Therein lies the challenge. We're going to get to this in just a moment because it's the deists. This line of thinking we're going to call deism. And the deists are those who believe in the clockmaker God. And then the question becomes, what is our role as human beings in a deist world? That is to say, God made us like clocks and wound us up. So are we really choosing our own actions, or are we just doing the things that we as human beings are programmed to do? I see good, and so I do whatever, right? I try to avoid punishment, and so I lie. I'm just doing what the clockmaker built me to do, right? I was built to avoid punishment, to avoid anything that would harm me, and to seek my own good. So when I see food, I will eat it. I'm just doing what I was built by the clockmaker to do. But these are questions that we were asking in the 17th century for the first time. It was a freeing moment for us to have people like Descartes talking for the first time about body, because we always believed in body and soul. And now he's asking us, body and soul, how is your body related to your soul? Does your body ever talk to your soul or vice versa? How's your body inside your soul? Empiricism. Have you ever seen your soul? Have you ever seen God? Empiricism is going to be a focus on anything that comes from your experience. And really anything that comes from our experience, right? Anything that we can agree on is going to come from our experience. Empiricism, from empirical data, from what we can see and feel and hear and taste and touch. Empiricism arose with John Locke over in England during the 17th century, 1632 to 1704. All certain knowledge, remember Rousseau was talking about that? What can we know for certain? Locke is going to say, all certain knowledge comes from your own experience. How do I know something? Because I experience it. And maybe you don't have the same experience as me, so maybe you don't know things in the same way that I know things. I know certain things in a certain way, and you know the things of your world in the way that you know them because of your own experience. We all experience things, and so we know those things. We have different experiences. We have the outer experience of our senses. So my senses, I can feel and touch and listen to and taste this marker, right? We have different experiences that come from our senses. But we also have this inner experience. Think our friend Descartes, right? I am. There's an inner experience going on here of me thinking. Even if I shut off the senses, I can still think after that. Even if I go blind and deaf today, I'll still be thinking. There's that inner experience by which we know ourselves. And also, there's this experience of God, whose existence is proven by the experience of self and its experiences. It's going to get deep now. So what can we be absolutely certain about? Not a lot. But there are a lot of things that we think are probable. Let's use a few examples. Is the sun going to rise tomorrow? It's probable that the sun is going to rise tomorrow because for the history of this earth, the sun every day rises in the morning. So it's probable that the sun is going to rise tomorrow morning. If the earth blows up tonight, is the sun going to rise tomorrow morning? Obviously not. So it's not certain, because who knows, God forbid, the earth could blow up tonight. Hasn't happened yet in billions of years. If the earth blows up tonight, then the sun won't come up. Presuming the earth doesn't blow up, then it's probable that the sun will come up. What about, think of a person that you haven't, that you're going to be seeing tomorrow. Can you think of someone you're going to be seeing tomorrow? At home or at work? Are you going to see that person tomorrow? Are you certain?
Spouse, partner.
Yeah, so think of your spouse, your partner. Okay? Are you going to see that person tomorrow? It's probable, but it's not certain. Follow me? God forbid something should happen to that person or to us before that happens. So we can talk about certain things, especially things in the future. They're probable, but they're not certain. Nothing in the future is certain. So probability, said John Locke, is another level of knowledge that plays an important role in human life because probability, we take our judgments, all of these judgments and our experiences, and it allows us to surmise the probabilities even though they're not entirely certain. I'm not entirely certain that the sun is going to come up tomorrow, but it's very likely. What about the knowledge of faith, right? Can you be certain about the things of your faith? John Locke said, never. You can tell me what you believe. I believe that Jesus died for my sins and rose again on the third day. That's very nice. Thank you for sharing. But how can you be certain about that? Remember John Locke? Like Descartes? If it's nothing that we can be certain about, then leave it outside this room. Check it at the door. Inside this room, we're only talking about things that we can be certain about. So is faith allowed in this room? Can you be certain about the things of your faith? Can you be absolutely certain that Jesus died on the third day? You can believe that, but it's part of your experience. Were you there? Did you see it? This is Locke. Can you imagine the challenges that this is going to create for the faith now? These are going to be huge. Modern philosophy is going to present a grave challenge for the church. So Locke opposed the fanatical enthusiasm of those who think that what they say is based on divine revelation. I love Father Jamie, but he is so funny when he gets up to speak because he talks about things that he's not even certain of. He sounds like he's certain. He'll get up and talk about how Jesus died and rose again. There's no way he can be certain about that. That's what John Locke would say. He would say, that fanatical enthusiast, right? Talking about things that he's not even certain about. Telling other people about things that he's not certain about. And so for those reasons, Locke advocated for religious tolerance, because what you believe, that's your business. Follow me? But instead of killing one another over the things that we believe or they believe, that's crazy. Can we not just get along and live in peace with one another, even though we believe different things? He said that intolerance arises from the muddled thinking, that confuses probable judgments of faith with the certainty of empirical reason. So, why did we have the Inquisition? Muddled thinking. Why did we kill the witches as part of the witchcraft trials in Salem? Muddled thinking, where we confused possible or probable things with things that we thought were certain. Were we certain that those people were witches? Were we certain that those people were heretics? That's muddled thinking that led to the death of a lot of people by the church. So that was John Locke. More on John Locke in 2 weeks. In this course, we're talking about the history of the church. So more than anything, it's what are the impact that these ideas are going to have on our church. The deists. The deists are important because they were not atheists. Who are atheists? Atheists reject the possibility of God. If you're an atheist, you don't believe in God. There's a layer. A lot of teenagers think that they're atheists. They're really not atheists. They're really agnostics. What's the difference? Atheist means there is no God. I don't believe in God. There is no God. That's what an atheist would say. There is no God. I know there is no God. Agnostics, I don't know. Maybe there is a God, maybe there's not a God. God isn't part of my experience. I don't know. If there is God or not, I don't know. It's not part of my experience. Going back to the empiricists, right? Agnostics are not going to say that God doesn't exist. Agnostics simply say, God could exist. God is just not part of my experience. Never tasted, felt, seen God. God had never spoken to me. I don't know. God may exist. I don't know. Don't know. Atheists are different. They say, God does not exist. Are deists atheists? No. By the very root of the word, they believe in God. Deists believe in God. Their notion of God is more like the clockmaker. God is the one who winds us up, who winds up the world, and then just lets go. The deists rejected the aberration of the atheists. They were also known as free thinkers because they weren't limited by orthodoxy, right? We had these orthodox people who said you have to believe certain things. No. Deists were free thinkers in that respect. Lord Herbert of Cherbury said that all true religion must be universal. Think about this for a moment. For us in the 21st century, this is not so radical. Back in his age, all true religion must be universal. Meaning, it's got to be something that's natural to all humankind. There are some religions, think Christianity, think Catholicism, that are based on particular revelations or particular historical events. Jesus, born, dying, rising. There's certain religions that are based on certain historical events, right? Religion's got to be larger than that. Religion's got to be universal and not based on particular historical persons or events. Because if a revelation is given to a particular people, think the Bible is given to a certain people, okay, great. If that people wants to follow it, happy for them. But that doesn't mean that all other people throughout the world should have to follow the revelation given to one particular people at one place in time. Cynthia's revelation at night last night, I'm happy for Cynthia. The question is, should all of us follow her revelation? Follow me? The revelation, the vision of Mary and the saint who told her that we shall be wearing green. Are we all coming dressed in green next Wednesday? We have to decide this. Are we going to come in green next Friday? Or next Wednesday? Or is that Cynthia's revelation? Same with the Bible. We have that revelation to the Hebrews and to those people around Jesus' day. Great. That was for them. Should all of us be following that? Questions by Lord Herbert of Cherbury. But the biggest blow to deism came from David Hume, who showed that reason is not as reasonable as the deists thought. and as the rationalists would believe. So let's talk about David Hume, because David Hume is going to cut the legs out from under reason. Because remember these other people, Descartes, Locke, they were all about reason. What can we be certain about? How much can we really be certain about? David Hume lived from 1711 to 1776. Seems like an interesting year to die. He was skeptical about human reason and thought that much of what we believe comes from irrational mental habits. Things like cause and effect. Have you ever seen cause and effect? You have a theory. I have a theory that when I plant this seed in the ground and water it, that it's going to spring up. But it's just a theory. I've never sat there watching that seed spring up. And even if I did, I only experience it at one moment in time. It's almost like a photograph, right? I experience it at one moment, I experience the next moment, I experience the next moment, I experience the next moment. It's like piecing together these photographs to try to understand cause and effect, right? Have you ever seen a child grow? Okay, you're thinking cause and effect. Okay, it's just natural for children to grow. Have you ever seen a child grow? No. I know what you've seen. Oh, one day you see the child and it looks like this. One day you see the child, it looks like this, etc., etc., etc. Eventually the child grows. All you have are individual experiences of the child. It's like individual photographs, one to another. You can't prove cause effect. Can you prove that that's the same kid as that one? So David Hume says we can't prove cause and effect. All we have is a series of phenomena and our mind links them together. The kid that's in my house today, my mind links that with the kid who was in my house yesterday. Or at least the memory that I have. There was a kid in my house? Okay, there was a kid in my house. My memory links those together. And that notion that something caused another thing has no basis in empirical observation, he said. All we have are individual photographs that our mind brings together and makes judgments about and thinks of a thing like cause and effect. Have you ever seen a substance? That is to say, have you ever seen an apple? What makes an apple an apple? I'm imagining that all you have are your individual experiences of what your senses have given you, that apples are a certain color and a certain shape. Have you ever seen a square apple? No. They're a certain color, a certain shape, a certain taste, a certain smell. You have these different experiences of these things that your mind brings together, and your mind calls that an apple. You've never experienced an apple. You've only experienced different things that your mind brings together and calls apple. This is crazy deep. He was smoking some serious weed that day. So he was saying, no one has ever seen a substance. No one has ever seen an apple. What they've seen is they've seen different objects that our mind brings together, lumps them together based on the observation of those things, based on the color, the weight, the taste, the feel, etc. Brings those together and calls that an apple. That one thing is an apple. But have you ever seen the substance of an apple? And so Hume was saying that we only see attributes that cling together. You know, the sight, the sound, the smell, the taste. Those things that cling together and coincide in one place in that thing that you call an apple. We say that those things reside in that substance, but have you ever really seen an apple? So this destroyed the possibility of speaking of anything except for attributes. So we can't really speak about apples, but we know that there are different things in this world. There are all the attributes of apples reside. Tastes like an apple, looks like an apple, smells like an apple, feels like an apple. We call it an apple. Apples don't exist. What exists is that thing that has the attributes of an apple. What does that do for our religion then? If suddenly only attributes exist, then suddenly only the things that our senses can grasp are real. Substances like God or the soul, they're simply based on attributes. Eternity, have you ever seen eternity? Have you ever lived in eternity? No, we live in time. He's saying, that's like trying to grasp eternity is like an ear being able to hear. When a person's not on acid, that is. Right? We can't know the eternal because we're bound in time. We can think about the eternal. There's no way that we can fathom that. There's no way that we can grasp that. And so it destroyed the possibility of speaking about things like God and the soul. So that was David Hume. James Reed, he thought David Hume was smoking something pretty wicked, and he came up with what he called the common sense philosophy. Really, David Hume? Really? You've never seen an apple? Right? Common sense tells me that if I show you this object, you're going to say it's an apple. And yet he's arguing that he's never seen an apple. That he sees things in which the attributes of appleness reside. Yeah, it looks like an apple, smells like an apple, tastes like an apple, feels like an apple, but I can't be certain it's an apple. Really?
Apple-like.
It's apple-like. It's apple-ish. James Reed then said, no, we have to use some common sense philosophy here. It's an apple. Deal with it. Have you heard of François-Marie Arouet? The pen name that he used was Voltaire. Voltaire was great because Voltaire had scathing attacks for everyone. He criticized everyone. He was an enemy of all fanaticism because he saw how the French Huguenots, the French Protestants, were persecuted under Louis XIV. He said Cartesianism, Descartes, remember Descartes, I think, therefore I am. He said that the great thing about Descartes and Cartesianism, Cartesianism is like a good novel. Everything is credible, you can believe it, but nothing is true. Think about that, like a good novel. That novel, you can believe the things in that novel, but it's not true. Descartes' philosophy, like a good novel. Sounds good. Good story. It's just not true. He said he mocked the deists for knowing more about God and the soul than is humanly possible. Think about it for a moment. When you get the likes of David Hume saying we can't know anything about God or about the soul, all we can know are the attributes or the things we experience. So Voltaire mocked them, the deists. He also said that the history of humankind is a progressive history of understanding ourselves and our institutions and adjusting to that ever clearer understanding. I think that's profound. The history of humankind is us getting to know better who we are as human beings and adjusting ourselves and our institutions to those new understandings of ourselves. Another man we know of as Montesquieu, his real name was Charles Louis de Secondat, Baron of Montesquieu, which is why we know him today as Montesquieu, lived in the early 18th century. He wanted to apply all of these principles of reason to government. What is the most reasonable form of government on earth? Think about that for a moment. We live in a monarchy here in France or in England. Is this the most reasonable source of government? The conclusion he came to was that a republic is the best form of government. Better than a monarchy, better than a despotism, better than having dictators and all. What is a republic? Well, we all know that power corrupts. Look at the church, right? Suddenly you get in a position of power and it starts corrupting the people in those positions. And so power should be exercised by balancing powers, by limiting powers. And the three that he came up with was a legislative power, the one that will formulate the laws, the executive power, the one that executes and approves those laws, and the judicial power, the one that judges those laws. What are the three divisions of government, the three branches of government in the United States today? Where do those ideas come from? Montesquieu. Simply trying to apply reason to government. And people in this nation, before it was a nation, said, you know what, we think he was onto something. Rather than having a king, a monarch, or having a despot, a dictator, why don't we have a republic? 3 branches. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, another French philosopher. Rousseau, I got news for you. You all thought that we're progressing as human beings? We're not progressing. We're falling farther and farther into artificiality. How is that for an indictment? For anyone who was in the French court at the time, all of us getting all powdered up in our wigs, right? Putting on all of these tight dresses and all these fancy suits and doing all the things that we're doing in the court. Are we really progressing by doing those things? Or are we falling farther into artificiality? Jean-Jacques Rousseau said the original order of politics is to serve the governed by safeguarding justice and freedom. So why do monarchies exist? For the sake of the king? No, this was radical. Think about this for a moment. A monarchy exists for the people, to protect the people. And the way that we protect the people is by having a king. The king or the queen's job is to safeguard the justice and the freedom of the people. So what happens if a king or a queen doesn't do that? Gotta go. What's going to happen in France just a few years later? Gotta go. Rousseau also said that dogmas, think the church now, and institutions, think the church, of so-called human progress corrupt people. We have to return to natural religion, right? These structures that we've set up in the Roman Catholic Church, no, Rousseau is very critical. Those things have gotten us away from God. We need to go back to believing in God, believing in our own immortality, and believing in a moral order, why we should be good. That was Rousseau. All of these things are going to impact the church, especially in Europe. How many people are Catholic in Europe today? The numbers plummeted after this period. Immanuel Kant, German, died in 1804, was a believer in rationalism, again in the power of reason, until he awoke from his dogmatic slumber by reading whom? Hume. So he read Hume and was intoxicated by the ideas. He got drunk on the ideas of David Hume. Immanuel Kant said, we cannot understand things as they are, but as our mind grasps them. You can't understand an apple as apple. You understand that apple as your mind grasps that apple. Feels like an apple, tastes like an apple, smells like an apple, feels like an apple. Must be an apple. But just because I have one way of looking at things doesn't mean that you necessarily have the same view of it. Follow me? Just because I see one thing, I see a book with white and some words on it, maybe a little bit of red. You say there's a picture on it, I don't see a picture. Okay, that's your experience of this book. I don't share that experience, right? You have one experience of the book, great, happy for you. I don't see what you see. I have another experience of this book. And if we were able to see the other perspective, we'd be able to see that. Kant was well aware of this. How it is that we don't understand, I can never fully understand the book. I have my own experience of the book. Everyone else has his or her own experience of the book. But we can't arrive at an objective knowledge of anything. I can't say that my experience or my truth is the truth. What did church leaders do for years? The way that I see the world is the truth. And if you don't believe it, then you are a heretic or heterodox. The way that I see the world is the way the world is. Women cannot be ordained. Wait a minute. Just because one person says that doesn't mean that we all have to agree. Immanuel Kant then said that there's no purely objective knowledge or pure rationalism, that pure rationalism is simply an illusion. And so many of the traditional arguments that supported Christian doctrines are no longer going to be valid. Any of the proofs for the existence of God, all these modern philosophers have dealt the death blow to all traditional theology. We're going to have to reinvent theology, and it's going to take us a while as a church to wake up to this. Kant said there's no way to prove the existence of God or of the souls. Our minds can't conceive of eternity. If such things are true, got news for you, our reason can't know them. Our reason can't grasp God or eternity or the soul. And so since pure reason can't prove God's existence, there is no pure reason. You follow me? There is no pure reason. There's no objective knowledge. The only thing that we have is practical reason, which simply means, practically speaking here, of all of us in this room, all 15 of us, how are we going to get along? Can we come up with some practical suggestions for getting along? And any rule that you come up with, Can we make it such that that rule applies to everyone? Any rule that you want to make has to apply to everyone in this room. That's practical reasoning. Or better yet, not just anyone in this room. Any rule that we make up about how we're going to treat one another has to apply to everyone in the world. Ooh. Think about how we're going to treat one another now. It's not going back to the Bible and saying, well, the Bible says we have to do this. No. Think about it. Let's be practical. What rules can we come up with that we believe should apply to all human beings, and we're going to follow those rules? I, too, am going to follow those rules that I believe should apply to all human beings. Practical reasoning.